Hi, and welcome to CSCMP's Member Mondays. I'm your host, Timothy Pajak, and I'm the Membership Engagement Manager here at CSCMP. Today, we're pleased to be joined by Chris Pride, Manager of Supply Chain Engineering at CDW, a provider of technology products and services for business, government, and education. Chris is currently serving his second term as the president of the Chicago Roundtable after many years serving in a variety of board roles. Chris, welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Chris, you've spent your entire career at CDW. Tell us a little bit about your evolution from working as a shipping associate after high school as a way to pay for your electronics engineering education, all the way up to your current role.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of summed it up there at the beginning with, it was just a job, right? Get a warehouse job, making $10 an hour to kind of pay for school a little bit until I got my degree. And instead of continuing on with that degree, I decided, I was with a good company, I was with good coworkers, I had great bosses, and I got promoted into management. And so I took on that leadership role for a good 10 years. And then I took this lateral transition into continuous improvement. The company sent me to Motorola's Greenbelt program, did a project, got my green belt, and then a couple of years later, I went and got a black belt to further add value to the organization. And it's been an interesting shift of roles. They pulled me out of supply chain and into IT for a little bit to work on business process. So I got a lot of experience to like agile methodology and how capital projects are run. And then I got pulled back into the supply chain side about 5 years ago into the management role that I have now within supply chain engineering. So it's been really great. I was able to hire an awesome person about 3 years ago and bring her to the CSCMP membership environment. And then more recently, I got to hire an analyst to build reporting for me, and brought him into the CSCMP environment also. So it's been a great 24 years at CDW, and I'm hoping to spend at least 6 more so I can get that round 30, possibly 35. It all depends on what other opportunities might express themselves.
What's your current role entail, and how has membership with CSCMP, been a contributing factor with your success?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I got pulled back into supply chain and was a great candidate for this engineering team to lead it was my CSCMP experience, my exposure outside of the organization to some of the more best practices, the leading technology, networking with people from different organizations so that, when we're considering a piece of technology or a partner, I can reach out to folks and say, hey, do you know anything about this? What's your experience been like? And so in my current role, I work with a lot of the senior leadership when we do consider technology implementations, kind of as a subject matter expert on how our system works, how it might play with the other systems, and how we would navigate and go through the change management with folks to kind of transition from our current processes to new processes. I also do a lot with data. There's data all over the place, and the challenge is making that data clean and usable, and really understanding how the physical processes leave those breadcrumbs behind and how you can interpret that data into how the process is working, how your costs are aligned, and whether when you make a change, are the numbers getting better or worse. So a lot of it's data driven, a lot of it's process driven. And then the associate that I hired a couple of years back, she's an industrial engineer, and she works with our 2 distribution centers to try to run a continuous improvement program, so that we're following standardized processes, and then we're looking at those processes and seeing, are there things getting in the way of the associates doing their job the most efficient way possible? Are there problems coming up, and how do we find those and then either tune the process, change the process, or add some training or add some technology to make it easier for them to do their jobs, and then we can get more productivity out.
What's experience been like, serving as roundtable president? What's that been like?
I mean, it's been a blast, honestly. Um, I never really envisioned myself being president. I kind of just raised my hand and said, "Hey, what do you guys need help with?" So I helped out with registration. I took pictures at events, and then at one point they're like, "Hey, Chris, you're just the guy that like talks to everybody and meets up with everybody." So I became like a hospitality chair, and that led to being the secretary, which was great because to me the secretary role is like the right hand of the president. They help keep track of everything. They help all the other officer roles kind of interconnect and bring a sense of order and structure to the team. And then after that, the thing about Chicago is people tend to move and get promoted and move on, especially when you're part of an organization like CSCMP. You get noticed, you get really good at your job, and so that kind of created a little bit of a vacuum up at top, and I became the most tenured person with leadership experience and with the history of what we were doing, and so I accepted that presidential challenge over the last 2 years, and then coming forward with a lot of changes happening because of the pandemic and because of the supply chain. It's been really tough to get tenured people to stick around because everyone's changing roles and they're fighting their own fights within their organization to try to keep things moving and keep our supply chain going. And so I was able to kind of stick it out for the second term. And being president is great. And it's not an easy job where you sit back and let everybody else do all the work. It's definitely helpful to delegate and get people going, but sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and kind of run the events yourself here and there. I know one of the things that we tried to continue to do with Chicago was not just have our monthly events, but work with the other roundtables and try to get more of like a regional perspective. The benefit of having this virtual atmosphere that we've had over the past year is you can cross-pollinate across geographies, right? When you have your local events, you can't get very far. You're not going to drive from Chicago to the Twin Cities or over to Dallas, Fort Worth, or over to Cleveland or Cincinnati. But through these roundtable virtual meetings, I've been able to connect with boards on the other roundtables and different members of CSCMP in these different states. And it's really great to expand the network that way.
You mentioned, people leaving for other roles or, getting promoted and at the roundtable level, then, not being in a position where they can continue to serve on the board. That's, kind of happening at the larger member level as well, in terms of, innovation and automation coming into supply chain. People are having to get cross-trained. Tell us what your view, like how, from a technological standpoint, how are these things going to impact supply chains in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, the world has gone through at least a decade, if not two, of change in the last 18 months, right? Everyone's seeing how the global supply chain can be impacted by this kind of pandemic. And so things like nearshoring, bringing the manufacture of goods closer to the end user, fabrication on demand, with like 3D printing, not having large amounts of inventory trapped in different areas of the country, being more lean, being more nimble. And then companies, they're seeing their labor force change, with the way that remote work has now enabled a lot of things. People are looking at that as an opportunity to change what they're doing. And it may require them skilling it up, or it may require companies to retrain some of their workforce as we add automation, right? As people like leave situations like warehousing or like restaurants in the service industry because, they don't want to be exposed to other individuals, or they don't like the way the pay scale is in that industry. You'll see pay scales rise in those areas, which may draw talent away from other sectors. So there's a huge reskilling. There's going to be this huge labor shift coming, And it may even impact the real estate market with more of this idea of virtual work or working wherever you want. I'm seeing articles how Silicon Valley is basically poaching talent from smaller companies that are in other regions of the U.S. or the world just because they can, right? There's no limit. You don't have to move to Silicon Valley to participate in that ecosystem and that structure. So the whole world is going to get turned upside down over the next decade as the changes we've seen in these last 18 months pull through. And I'm just really hoping that, you know, at the federal level and the state level, that the folks in charge really understand how much, you know, from the public side and from the private side, we have to invest in that infrastructure, right? Whether it's the physical infrastructure that our supply chain runs on, like the roads and the rails, and our ports, and even like the airports and things like that. It's also that people infrastructure, right? We need to get to kids when they're in high school and have them know that supply chain is a very valid career. I mean, it's super in demand right now. So many roles are open just within the supply chain. How do we move that awareness, you know, from the basically entry level, professional level into the college and universities where they have supply chain programs? How do we get that further down into the high schools so our youth are thinking about that as they make their longer term career choices by the universities they go to?
Fantastic. And before we wrap up, 2 questions I want to make sure that we touch on. So first, you know, you talk about networking. I hear you talk about networking frequently. You know, what's been the most impactful connection that you've made through CSCMP? So that's the first one. And then second question, I want to make sure we touch on, I know you're passionate about Disney and, you know, your long-term career, right? You've been at CDW for the bulk of your career, and Disney is kind of a goal for you as something related to the parks and resorts. Talk about that. Maybe someone watching will be part of the network that helps make that happen down the road.
Yeah, we can only hope. I mean, I would say like the very first connection I made was Noreen Ryan. And I think it was at a different industry event. But she saw me as that wallflower, very insecure, very introverted, not really engaging at, you know, an event that involved networking. And she peeled me off the wall and started introducing me to folks. And through that, I became more comfortable to get out of my own skin. And so when I started coming to CSCMP events, you know, I was at the annual seminar that Chicago puts on in the spring, and I was talking to the president at the time. His name's Dan Smolinski, and I was like, "This is a great event. You guys should do this more often. This content is so great." He's like, "It's a lot of work. Why don't you join the team?" And I'm like, "I don't know if I have the capacity to do all." He's like, "Well, just kind of like get involved, join the committee, and kind of see how it's going." And then from there, I was just always around. And so all the different folks that I've met through the roundtable, great folks like Susie Bodner, who came to the U.S. from Hungary and was part of the Cincinnati roundtable. Then she went to San Francisco and was part of that roundtable. And then she came to Chicago. And I mean, since she came to Chicago, I think she's been through 3, 4, maybe even 5 different roles as she's met people, and they've offered her opportunities. And she's just gotten so much experience that she's now got her own consulting organization while she kind of figures out where her next home might be. So, I mean, there's so many great folks that I've met at these different CSCMP events or going to Edge and meeting up with folks there. It's really hard to pick just one because everybody you meet has that little spark that helps connect you maybe to the next person, or that you can circle back and kind of talk to them again and find out what's new, and then you can introduce them to another person.
So Disney.
That was a 2-parter. So Disney, yeah. So what my real passion, what I really love is, I love sparking that spark in other people, right? The passion to serve. I love servant leadership. And when I look at Disney, it's all about the customer. It's all about the guest experience. And that aligns so much with what we do here at CDW, because one of our mottos, and even like one of our internal branding icons, is everything revolves around the customer. And we actually have an image. It looks like an atom, where the customer's at the center, and all the different areas within the company kind of rotate around it. And so, when I think of that, you need to have that kind of customer service methodology embedded in your culture. And the way to do that is to influence the leaders, who then influence the frontline folks that directly impact the customer, right? So when I think of, at CDW, it's the account managers, the customer service reps, it's the engineering folks and the field folks that engage with the customer. Those are the people that are representing CDW to the customer. And so their leadership needs to be the best leaders they can be to really drive home. It's not about profit. It's not about revenue. It's not about pushing widgets. It's about listening to the customer and finding out what problems they need to solve. You flip it over to Disney, and all people want to do is they want to escape and immerse themselves in that Disney world or that Disneyland, just that Disney experience. And so I want to be the guy at Disney who trains and coaches, the frontline leaders, the managers that deal with the associates that are selling soda or popcorn or pushing the buttons on the line or sweeping up just the regular trash and debris that happens. I want to influence the people that are talking to the ones that actually the guest experience directly, so the guests have the best experience, right? Sell that magic, serve that magic, so that everybody has like the best time they can at Disney World. That's why I go to Disney World. It's not for Mickey Mouse. It's to know that once I step on that property, there's no problems that won't be solved just by asking a question and saying, hey, you know what? I'm having a little bit of an issue here. What can we do to fix it? And they somehow figure out how to do it in a way that is cost effective in the organization.
That's all the time we have for today. Chris, thank you so much for your membership with CSCMP, and appreciate all that you've done over the years as a volunteer to grow the local roundtable. Thank you again for joining us for this edition of Member Mondays.
Welcome.